Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Chinesky. Rejoining the show for the three-peat, third time making his appearance, Mr. Chris Waldrum, the Pirate Master, leader of Inspired Nutraceuticals. How are you, sir?
I am well, Robert. Thank you so much for having me on here. And just like our conversations prior to this going live, I hope we bring the menagerie of awesome topics that we were just talking about. So thank you for having a platform and having me on it.
Absolutely, man. It's always a blast when we talk. We've known each other for several years, and every time it's like I always come away with like either just feeling like a genuine joy or insight into something else, because talking with you, it's always uplifting, but always insightful and knowledgeable at the same time. So it's any chance I get a chance to talk with you, either face to face or on the phone, I'll never pass that up.
Dude, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. So what do we got on the docket today?
First off, let's start with your name. So for the people watching this on video, I'm using a new streaming service that allows me to either record or broadcast live to YouTube. So at a future juncture, Chris, you and I can do a live, and we'll field questions on the fly from people.
Nice.
We'll see how that goes. But you can enter in your name into this thing, and so the Pirate Master. Let's start off with that first.
Man, so ask for whatever your title name, or you want your username and whatnot like that. And I was like, man, if you could put whatever you want, what would I put? Like, definitely a freaking Pirate Master. I mean, it'd either be that or like Elon Musk the third or something out there. So Pirate Master was a little bit more maybe relatable to this conversation. So.
That works. So before we fired up the podcast engine, you and I were talking off camera. Just you said y'all had a killer month this past month with as far as retail and online sales. And what I want to get into is which made you put into new orders with the manufacturing. So let's rewind back, because I don't think you and I have ever broached this subject before. When you first started Inspired to where you are now, how did you go about vetting manufacturers? Because you had a history in the industry before that with the other companies you worked with. So maybe you already had some previous relationships with manufacturers. Has that changed since Inspired's inception? Have you changed manufacturers, and what steps do you take to identify quality ones versus ones that may not be as reputable?
Man, so I think the biggest thing to start vetting through and siphoning through is just going to be any kind of validation with not just certificates of analysis, because as we all know, I can go to Kinko's and put whatever the hell I want on it, and that doesn't necessarily mean that product's legitimate. So it would be the availability of giving me like a full spectrum of the formula, and not just the ingredients in there, but the actual flavors too. And very few manufacturers will tell you the whole flavor panel. And there's not a lot of companies, we've done it before, but there's not a lot of companies that will take a base formula, send it out to Flavor House, then they own it and send it back, because it's extremely time consuming and you have to purchase a ton. Like the MOQs on flavoring, it's quite a bit to be able to have your pricing down. So most manufacturers will hide costs under the veil of flavoring, and that could be with putting hardly any flavoring in there, putting a ton of sucralose, whatever you want to name it. So The biggest thing, because our first manufacturer didn't do that, and I didn't know why, and it wasn't until later, until someone much more educated than me told me, it's like, well, Chris, because they don't want you going anywhere else, because once they own that flavor, it'll be so difficult, even if you send it to one of the good flavor houses, to replicate identically. So if you go to a manufacturer, ask if they'll give you the full flavor formula. Majority won't. But if they do, then they have complete transparency, because then if something happens, if it turns sour, you could take that formula anywhere else and they'll be able to replicate it identically. So it sounds kind of like superficial on just that aspect, because obviously quality matters too. Mm-hmm. But second would be what testing agency or what testing lab do they use? Where do they send it out to be able to validate every single thing, identify all the ingredients inside there too? So those would be kind of like the two bases that I'll signify as being a legitimate relationship, other than somebody else that just beats price. And now that I'm manufacturing for other people, a lot of individuals just want the best price. How can I get the lowest cost of goods? And what people, and this we could talk about this afterwards, but what they don't understand, there's a base cost that goes across before you even account for ingredients, before you account for the label, for anything. There's a base manufacturing fee. So if something seems too good to be true, it's because it is too good to be true, and they're legitimately spiking it with some, bad shit or whatever.
Is it bad, or is it really the good shit that we're all hoping we get?
Dude, it's like, well, the good shit's expensive, so typically they'll just put like excess amounts of dextrin in there, or more citric acid, malic acid, any kind of the mixing agents or the filler agents of what they say. And that's like, if you look at a formula and the actual like constituents in there are maybe like 5 grams, but then the scoop is like 10 grams. You're like, okay, where's that other 5 grams coming from? It's not just flavoring. And that's one of the ways that they're kind of dishonest.
Gotcha. So since you brought up the flavoring, does that mean when let's use Ember for an instance. You've got 2 flavors. You got Lemon Grove and Malibu Breeze. Are those flavors unique to you? Like, do you sign some kind of confidentiality or exclusivity flavor agreement with the flavor house or the manufacturer that you're using to where they can't use that exact flavor profile and just call it something else like Bahama Breeze or, Malibu Sunshine or Malibu Moonshine with like another company?
Yeah, so with the manufacturer, typically, no, never. They're never going to sign anything like that. You know what I mean? That's their intellectual property. Unless you work with a flavor house, then 100%. Like it's your intellectual property that nobody could use. If you work with somebody like we do, who we do the flavors inside, then it depends on your relationship with that manufacturer. And it probably depends on the size and scale of your company too. If you're a smaller company, you typically get treated not very well. If you're like a cash cow to the company, they're going to do everything within their power to be able to keep you there and fortify that relationship. So it's dependent on your communication and that relationship with the manufacturer if they're going to give it to anybody else out there, because there are a lot of flavors that taste similar across the board. And then it's just copy and paste. They don't have to do any R&D with the formula. Super easy. So that depends on your level of communication and relationship with them. But it's happened to us, and it happened with our first manufacturer because we launched Galaxy Pop. And this was about almost 6 years ago, before Galaxy Pops or Rocket Pops really started popping off. There was a Rocket Pop, but nobody really kind of elaborated onto that.
Yeah.
We did Galaxy Pop. It turned out that they did a couple other Galaxy Pops, and the only reason I know that is because the same accounts that bought our products bought their products, and they were like, "Hey, it should taste the same." Guess what? They're manufactured at the same place. Guess what? They're selling insider secrets. It's like a spy. So yeah, you got to be very careful, and it's just like the level of communication, man. I like doing like FaceTimes like this because then you see the person,
right?
And it's a lot easier to vet the person when you could see any kind of emotional reaction. There's nowhere for them to run or fly out there if you can fly out there and then have that relationship. So yeah.
Cool. With the orders that you just placed, and you were mentioning to me off camera that you were kind of doing a little bit of a juggling act, trying to figure out how many quantities to order because you had a banner month. But then going forward, how do we know how the consumers are going to react because of a lot of the fear mongering that's going on in the media and whatnot? Have you run into any issues as far from a manufacturing or product availability standpoint, or raw materials in short supply at all from what you're hearing? Or have y'all had no issues with that whatsoever?
Yeah, so fortunately, the supply chain hasn't been really compromised, and that was going into it back in like February, then leading into March. The manufacturers were like, "Oh my God, dude, we're not going to be able to get metric tons of this anymore because of all the logistical problems of the supply chain." Yeah. Now, with that being said, there's some of the like trademark ingredients that we worked with, and they don't purchase as much as like, let's say, like a bulk glutamine or something. You might do, $500,000 PO on that, but if somebody's just doing something like, I'm not going to name any names, but one of the trademark companies out there, they do a lot smaller runs, so there's going to be more problems with that. So there were a couple of ingredients. One I could elaborate on was quatropholate. Quatropholate, which we have inside of our multivitamin, it's a methylated folate. We had the worst issue of that, and their reason was that the demand was so high, and that's definitely not it, because you could use like 1 kilo, and that makes like 500 million containers because you only use microgram. But it was the issue of actually getting it out through the ports because it got quarantined. It sits there. And so it was more on the smaller aspects of our formulas, but not like the bulk stuff, BCA, citrulline, glutamine. All of that was totally fine. But on the more unique ones, definitely.
Gotcha. I have an interesting question for you. And I mean, this might be venturing into taboo or risque territory. But in your products, we know that you've got nitrates in FSU. Mm-hmm. You also have a heaping dose of VASO6 in Legend. And now we know that the powers that be over the nitrates don't really like the VASO6 guys. So is there any issues from your side? Do you get any kickback as a brand owner having those? Now, I know that you can't put them both in the same product, but even just having both ingredients in your arsenal, have you run against any kickback from either side?
Man, that's going to be like somewhat preferential, but if it comes down to a legal standpoint and there are like battles outside of it, then it's going to be like the ingredient mafia, and it's like the ingredient war or ingredient games. And I love nitrates. I think nitrates are superior to any other vasodilator out there.
Mhm.
And I think the terminology that was used with VASO6 was the main issue. And since that terminology seems to be transformed into something that's maybe more palatable in that direction, I don't think there's much of an issue. But it would be like if I had something that did this exact thing, the science says that, and then somebody else and tries to implicate their product as superior or as superior, I'd be like, listen, motherfucker, of course that's incorrect, you know? So I can understand from that viewpoint, but, you know, we're in an industry of drama, so everything gets extrapolated and manipulated and transforms into something far out there. But, I mean, I probably could use nitrates with VASO6. I mean, I don't know. I was never told I couldn't.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I've heard just whisperings from various sources that if you tried to put one of them to the other, certain parties may interject and say, we're not going to license an ingredient if certain other ingredients are present in a formula. Yeah. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that on more than one occasion. So that leads me to believe, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. Yeah.
So onto that, trademarked ingredients, especially along the lines of like NO3T nitrates. I don't know if Matt does it with VASO6, but even with like Nitrosogen, Nutrition 21, they won't let you put that ingredient if the formula has something that's even remotely gray market. And that could be like hordenine, hygenamine, and methyltyramine. So on that basis, 100%. It's like you don't want to have your cash cow or like this golden goose that you have put into something that's, you know, gray market or whatsoever, because that can be damaging to your name. So in that aspect, 100%. But as far as like conflicting with those two, like I was never told, but maybe, you know, they're a little bit more liberal on me.
Maybe so. With that, what is I was gonna say, what product has been the biggest seller for you during this quarantine episode?
Man, great question. So unlike everybody else that was kind of like doing the whole knee-jerk reaction and coming out with health and wellness just to be able to fit this whole pandemic scare, we've kind of been fortified in that level. Our greens have crushed it. Multivitamin absolutely crushed it. And even our protein. So you definitely see trends. If people aren't going to the gym, then pre-workout sales are probably going to diminish quite a bit. But other aspects, FSU crushed it. Amino continued to be consistent. And the greens and the multivitamin, we just could not keep in stock. And they're expensive too. Like the multi and the greens, they're not the cheapest product out there. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people are willing to go invest something like that because they know it has superior quality or the formula superior to them. So definitely anything with the health and wellness side. But yeah, everybody else doing the whole like, come on, man. I don't know. It's like a Me Too movement for the immune system response.
With the multivitamin, what I guess made you want to release one? Was it that because I mean, there's multivitamins are probably next to are far and away the most widely used dietary supplement. I think just even people that don't lift or go train or involved in athletics or fitness in any capacity most likely take a multivitamin. So there's a bunch of options out there. Was it you weren't satisfied with the current state of them and you personally wanted to do it? Was there a giant demand from your core constituency saying, hey, we're already buying our pre-workout, our protein powder, our greens, all this other stuff from Inspired. You know, why don't you guys just give us a multivitamin so we can just make it a one-stop shop?
Absolutely. So you make like a couple really good points there. One of the first reasons that we did a multivitamin is because in the past, Inspired had a lot of success with doing Devastate and that whole model of having the clinically dosed, regurgitated nonsense that everybody says about pre-workouts, or even having a scoop that's somehow more substantial than the other ones because it's a higher net weight. So we had really good success with that in the beginning because we could say that we had 6 grams of citrulline or 3.2 beta-alanine and that whole Russell. So it was just kind of a progress in maturity and consciousness as a company that we wanted to have something that was outside of that realm but offer superior value to people. So that led into what other markets could we get into. Multivitamin greens were the first, and then we did our protein too, which is kind of in the same line as being a health and wellness product. But multivitamins, like that subject and topic alone gets completely convoluted because Centrum, obviously, it goes through your body. You poop it out, or you get something from Costco. It's inferior quality, or all the minerals are oxidized, or it's just like you're not going to absorb anything. So we wanted to get something that was high efficacy as far as being bioavailable, and then having unique aspects added to it that are outside of just like your vitamins and minerals. And with the vitamins and minerals, I mean, we use a methylated folate. We have a vitamin D that's from mushrooms, so the bioavailability is superior. It's equivalent to 800 IUs. We use bisglycinate and all kinds of minerals for every mineral inside of there. And then we have the cool additives with the Pico 2, the Sensoril at 250 milligrams, which that alone is just a dope product to have outside of our multivitamin. And then also the Spectra 2 for your antioxidants. So it's kind of like identifying there's a demand for it, but the demand is usually misplaced with misinformation. So how can we fill that demand with legitimate product where people take it, they actually feel, and then have it validated by having, ingredients with actual studies behind it. So lastly, not to ramble on, so we identified that there's a lot of loose ends in Inspired because we continue to do the same thing, and redundancy in the company is like the worst thing that you could do. So we started feeling the demand. We had everything secured with Devastate. We had a dope amino. We had a couple cool areas, but we didn't have a longevity aspect to the company. So they'd buy our sports nutrition, but then they'd go buy, some other brand now or Nutrasuma or whatever else is out there. So it's being able to facilitate a comprehensive purchase for the individual. And any brand out there that's listening, like if you don't have things to fill that spot, they'll end up coming to my company. After they come to my company for a multivitamin, they're going to get devastated and stop taking your pre-workout. So you need to fortify what you have instead of just being a one-trick pony. There you go. That's a long one. Sorry.
Well, no, man. Any rants you want to get on, feel free to. I mean, that's my purpose here is just to ask the questions and then get out of the way and let you roll with as much knowledge as you want to drop. So if you feel like going on a 15-minute filibuster, feel free to.
I appreciate that.
With the multivitamin, you got Sensoril in there at 250 milligrams. Was there, so the most common forms that we see are KSM versus Sensoril, and now we've seen Shodan used a couple of times, and then they've also got that new Gonda, which is, I guess, a nootropic riff on it. I don't think it's going to give you any special, unique nootropic benefits that any other form of ashwagandha would give you, but that's a topic for another discussion. I guess why choose that specific form of ashwagandha? Was it a size thing? Do you like that one more? Did you experiment with the other ashwagandha alternatives?
Yeah, so I mean, we take ashwagandha because it's standardized for withanoloids inside there. Shodan, super cool. I think Shodan's like 30%.
Yeah,
withanoloids and whatnot. So, like, two factors. One, the first most important, it has to be efficacious. There has to be some sort of sensory effect, or that you feel, even if it's placebo or whatever. The second is like brand identity. The customer needs to be able to identify what that ingredient is. If we use Shodan, yeah, it's cool to people like you and me, but a normal person out there doesn't give two shits about it. But they know what KSM is. I've used KSM for almost 5 years now. We were one of the first ones. We put it in our Legend in a performance product, and then we had an Ember to follow up with that. So that has like really good brand identity. And same thing with Sensoril too. If we were to use something else, we would have to have some sort of benefit as far as like compensation for promoting that, building the brand for it. But if there's no identity outside of that, then it doesn't really do a benefit for the brand overall, even if it's superior to the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Do you notice, I guess, in your just testing of the forms, one of them has like more of an acute, like harsher softening or like lowering of cortisol compared to the other one? Because you've got the KSM at 800 in Legend, and you've got 250 in the multivitamin. So I guess my question is, why put the Sensoril in the multivitamin? If you already have KSM in the other products, why not use KSM in the multi? Or is it just to kind of differentiate, and you were looking for a different thing that you thought Sensoril may have provided?
Kind of both of those right there. Would it be a redundancy if we had KSM, or would it be like an additional like brand awareness like KSM already has with Legend? Does Sensoril appeal more to like the health and wellness side? That was kind of the choice that we did. Yeah, it does. 250
really good point.
Already has a clinical study behind it, so there's good validation with that. But it also differentiates the products too, just to not have like overall redundancies in it. So people are like, well, why the fuck would I take a multivitamin if I could get Legend and I get 800 milligrams inside of it? So, and there's kind of two different consumers there too. The customer that buys the multivitamin might not be the same as the one that buys Legend. And if they do buy both, as a consumer, it's typically cool to see different ingredients instead of just having one, put across the board and whatnot.
Right. Interesting. Oh, with the pre-workout with Devastate, we've got Galaxy Pop, we've got Malibu Breeze, and we've got Sour Yummies. With that new order that you put in with the manufacturer that we referenced earlier, are there any other flavors in the works?
Man, so we could kind of talk about Devastate of the Union, which is the cool new Devastate. and we have Crimson coming out too. So with the
There's a new Devastate. Is that what was teased on Stack 3D the other day?
yeah, dude. So that's going to be kind of the introductory collaboration of me and Landon. Landon Suggs came from Ntel.
Yep.
He had Aries, which Aries was a really big success in itself. And we wanted to have something to like announce that and introduce this new level of kind of like artistry and innovation that we're going to bring. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be the newest one. So I just placed a purchase order for that, and it's going to be launched. And I hate to promote the other guys out there, but it's going to be launched at the Stack 3D Expo. And Crimson's going to be launched just 4 weeks out of that. And the rest of this year is going to be extremely packed. But for worldwide, to answer your question, we're not going to have any new flavors come out, but we're going to have new additional limited formulas. Not going to have 10 Devastates like I've had previously. Devastate of the Union is going to be a limited run of that. We're probably going to only do 2,000 of just one flavor, sell out of that, and then maybe do another flavor in the future, kind of on down the line. But new formulas are coming out. Not the same worldwide.
Okay, so Devastate. You said Devastate of the Union.
Devastate of the Union. Yeah. So to kind of give you the marketing premise behind that. If anybody's seen like V for Vendetta, one of my favorite movies, done by the Wachowskis.
Ours too. Yeah, we love that movie.
Dude, every time I watch it, I started Inspired because it really, really meant something to me, and being able to have a message to connect to other people really matters to me. And I got so put off by just doing formulas and trying to keep up with the Joneses that I lost sight of like the creative artist side that I really, really enjoy doing. So this is going to be like, boom, right back into it. The label is the dopest label. We spent so long on it. And I need to show you. But I'm going to have to take a signed contract, though, that you give up your firstborn if you tell him.
I think I signed an NDA with you like some years ago, so we'll just say it's honored under that.
Yeah. So Devastate the Union. I think like V for Vendetta, the messaging, the marketing behind that is it's extremely unique and very well thought out. Like I obsess over marketing. If you like, I launched a brand called Anastasis, and if you see all the little details to that. Yep. There's just so many details because I really enjoy bringing something special. So when the customer gets it, there's an experience, and it's not that it gets you high. It's not that it does this, but like you get this overall feeling and sensation from the branding, from the message and whatnot. And this is like, yeah, if you haven't seen that movie, watch it because, I mean, gets me fired up. You know what I mean?
It's incredibly applicable to today's circumstances as well for anybody that hasn't seen it. It is scary how much of that could translate to the modern times.
Dude, totally. And like, so if you see like the bad guy in it who plays whatever dictator in that movie, he was in a movie called 1984, which 1984 is a book by George Orwell, and it talks about the state and what's happening. And in that movie, he was actually the good guy, which is kind of weird to see how that transitioned and evolved into him being a good guy in 1984, same kind of atmosphere, then going into V for Vendetta, but then becoming that dictator kind of guy. But it's cool evolution.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Anastasis because I just finished putting together some bookshelves because we've got extra time on our hands, obviously, with the lifestyle now. And so we were unpacking some boxes, and I still have like the original labeling and packaging of like the small little sample packs of the nootropic and the chillax thing. What was it called? Lax was it. And we've got the box of it, and it looks so goddamn good. And we put it up there on the shelf as like artwork or decorations because it looks that good.
Dude, yeah, we're relaunching that. So thank you for bringing that.
Are you?
Man. So the only reason that stopped for the time being is because I was partnered with one of my really good friends and his media company, because he's just a media extraordinaire, took off. They're called Mainco, but they're like high production, dope. So as his took off, Inspired started to take off even more like that, and it just pulled us away. So it wasn't any reason that it slowed down because like any kind of failure or business sense. It was just there was no attention to be able to really dedicate to that, and I didn't want to take away anything from it because it's so special. And the relaunch of that, dude, when you see the formulas, man, the formulas are super dope, and the formulas previously were really cool.
Yep.
The branding is even more superior, like the labels. It's super stoked. You're gonna love the formula. It's gonna be all naturally sweetened flavor, which I don't care what you think about that, but there's a lot of people that do want to have the no artificial blah blah blah.
Right.
Connect is not going to have any caffeine inside of it. but the effect that you get from it. And there's a lot of ingredients, or a couple of ingredients we spoke about today that are going to be inside there, including enXtra, which enXtra is a really cool ingredient from ginger, I believe. And we're going to have it there too. So relaunch of that. Oh, it's going to be fun.
Have you used enXtra by itself? I have yet to try it, or either in a product or on its own. I guess I need to reach out to, I don't know, Biovate, I think it does it. Or I'm not sure who has the ingredient, but what are your experiences on it, if any?
Yeah, so I came across enXtra about 3 years ago at Supply Side in Vegas, and which is only an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half away. So drove down, walking through. It was at the same booth, and this might have been this distributor because it was at the same booth that had nitrosogen, which is Nutrition 21. So I don't know if there was any kind of correlation with that. A super cool guy, unheard of ingredients, and I looked all over the place. This is back when, it might have been Shodan or it was this other kind of ashwagandha that was micro encapsulated, but there was this little teeny balls, and we couldn't use it because it was like Muscle Tech already had the rights for a year. But anyways, this was the only other ingredient there that was new and innovative. Everything else there is just like material or spirulina, chlorella. So they gave me these little stick packets. The little stick packets, though, did have caffeine inside of it. And it was their branded natural coffee, like green coffee bean caffeine. I didn't think too much of it, but it gave me the most awesome energy. And it was super low caffeine, but I had this very intense nootropic effect. And I've tried like everything from, citicolin to like paracetams and all the good shit like that. Yeah. And it gave me like a definite noticeable effect. The biggest drawback, and like I'll tell you, it's going to be in one of the devastates too, but the biggest drawback at the time is nobody could flavor it. Nobody could touch that flavoring, and it just had this. It's like a ginger root, I believe. You could. Is that what it is?
Yeah, Alpinia galanga is the actual plant, and it's a relative of ginger.
There you go. Okay, so it was spicy like ginger. So the palatability of it, and even the mixability, it had like really really bad settlement issues, which not many people care now. But we weren't able to flavor it. It was going to be in the Crimson relaunch, which we had the Crimson with the DMHA. Mm-hmm. It's going to be like my replacement for something that was completely natural, but gave you this really good sensory effect when it was combined with around 300 milligrams of caffeine and then 300 milligrams of enXtra. Super dope, but it just, we weren't able to utilize it then. But now it's like, cool again, I guess, or maybe people could flavor it and mask it better.
How would you juxtapose it or compare it to dynamine, teacrine, or if you've tried Zynamite? Because that one's also starting to pop up on the block, and I don't think the average consumer has any idea what these compounds feel like. We know how dynamine and teacrine kind of react, but how do these newer things like enXtra and Zynamite, if you've used that, if you haven't, then we'll bypass. But how do they stack up against dynamine and teacrine?
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit before that, Zynamite came out, but we weren't able to use it in ingredients here. It's from South Africa. Right. And it had to be GRAS certified for us to be able to use it in our site. Our manufacturer, so we actually got 100 gram samples of it, put it into the first Ember because I wanted to use it. I didn't want to relaunch Ember. We just relaunched it, but I didn't want to relaunch it unless we had something cool and unique behind it, or having like an ingredient that we could really lead the marketing with. Mm-hmm. We weren't able to utilize it, but we got samples with it. So with that being said, we took all the samples. I thought it was good. I thought the cost per product wouldn't justify the effects or the physiological kind of effects that I got from it. I think from a marketing standpoint, if you're able to really get behind that, like I know Ben from Morphogen, he has it inside their product. I think he has it as like 500 milligrams, which is holy crap, that's a ton. I never took it at that high dosage. I think we only had it as like a 200, 100 per scoop or something, and is mixed with caffeine and Adventure Z. And it didn't give me that significant of an effect to justify the cost of goods increase. And that's like what we're in an industry where just because something's new, people find it like superior or interesting. And that's like, dude, that's complete bullshit. It's just the pharmaceutical side of their marketing team that's making it seem like that. And people are so quick to jump to the gun just because something's new, they want to put it in, but they don't understand like the cost of goods and how inhibited that could be to sell into retail or doing international. So with all that in mind, we said fuck it, took it out. But as far as that comparison to like an enXtra, I would think those would be much more similar than teacrine or like a dynamine, which technically they don't give you a stimulant effect, but I always felt a stimulatory effect from it.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I need to contact the manufacturers and get some samples shipped over, because there's some products that might be in the works that I'm considering using them in. I've never tried them on my own, so I don't want to just throw something into a formula or suggest it to a brand if I've never used it personally.
Absolutely, man. And that's the thing too. It's so hard whenever if you do a lot of R&D on your own, when you try something, is that going to have a blanket effect or some sort of effect with other individuals? Like,
Right.
hey, dude, everything in your brain chemistry, your neuroreceptors are completely different from everybody else. So that's got in too. So with our formulas now, we have something that's a little bit more comprehensive across the board instead of specifically identified for like an individual like myself.
Right. And plus you got to downplay, I guess, the placebo effect. If I know I'm taking something, I'm going to want to have that feeling that I'm thinking it's going to work, which is kind of good with Sandy. She just trusts me to implicitly whatever I give her. So she doesn't know what I'm giving her. I just say, here, try this, and let me know what you think.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a guinea pig or a lab rat here.
Dude, as long as it tastes good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, if something doesn't taste good, she will let me know immediately. I put together 2 like super tart supplements the other day for her. It was a nootropic and a non-stim pump powder. And both of them, one of them was like strawberry lemonade and the other one was like berry lemonade or electric lemonade. And I put those, and she's going, and she says, I need something bitter, just something to put in here. So I took a huge scoop of Pico 2 and threw that in there, and it tamed everything down. So yeah, we got to find some kind of
in there.
Yeah, something in there to even it out.
Absolutely.
You've got 2. I hope I'm not getting too much into the weeds as far as ingredient questions with you, but I find it interesting because you've got. I really have always liked your formulations, and the products I've used have always worked out really well for me. Devastate still remains one of the like ball bustingest pre-workouts that I've never been able to handle a full serving on. It was too fucking intense. With that, you've used cocoa butyrol and Advantra-Z in various products over the years, and they both, act as beta agonists. Do you notice anything specifically different between the 2 of them?
Yeah, and this is completely like subjective in my opinion because I'm not a fucking doctor or anything like that. But so synephrine and the constituents in bitter orange, technically, I guess they could be considered as somehow being in the pathway of a bronchodilator, but I have never gotten that effect. However, with anything from like cocoa, theobromine, incamordopamine, incafeodopamine, I got a huge bronchodilation effect with that. And the same thing with like hygenamine. So our first Devastate white cut, whenever I started formulating that, I was like, I need to have something that makes this unique. We have the citrulline, we have this, it's all this, the same regurgitated stuff. And so I started looking, I was like, dude, I love cocoa butyrol. What pathways, what does that really do? Yes, beta-2 adrenoceptor agonist, so works in the same pathways as like an albuterol or a clenbuterol. So I found that like extremely attractive. I was like, ooh, that kind of sounds exotic. It sounds edgy. So we use that in combination with theobromine and with hygenamine, and those 3 together, even in a small dosage, people got an actual noticeable effect. And without us telling them what it's going to do, they would just come back and say, dude, I could breathe better. And so you're like, dude, that's kind of sexy, a really good marketing ploy to get onto. With Advantra-Z, even though we use quite a bit of that, I've never had that kind of stimulatory effect where it helped me with my bronchodilation. And this, I come from a background of having like asthma, actually using albuterol, and I've used clenbuterol as well too. So as far as like, and that's the thing with a lot of ingredients, even though on paper it might go down the same pathway or have some sort of like same resonance, the same thing with like a L-tyrosine and L-dopa. Technically they go down, they battle for the same receptors, but one impacts you differently, even if they should technically do the same thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really dependent on the individual and with application too on how it's being applied, if it's being applied with a pre-workout or taken outside of it. So there are so many different variables, but as far as those 2 relating to each other as a bronchodilator, then no, cocoa butyrol or theobromine or a cocoa extract was always superior to a synephrine or a bitter orange extract.
Gotcha.
Kind of way out there on that. So I don't
know. No, that's good.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned that it was before we actually got on the call that the amino had done a fairly prominent amount of sales. What do you think was actually driving that?
Man, and this is not shoot ourselves in the foot, but flavor matters so much. And I had to learn the hard way because I thought a formula that was superior was going to sell more than something that was inferior but with better flavoring. I couldn't be more incorrect. Our aminos are probably one of the best tasting aminos on the market. But at the same time, because this is all synergistic with each other, like you have to have a formula that backs it up too. So
Right.
people look at the formula, and on our side of it, when you're more of like the supplement kind of nerds, you are brought in by the story of what the formula, the supplement fact panel is telling you. But if you're outside of that, you don't really give a shit. You're going to have somebody like me or you that promotes it. So you might get somebody to try it that has absolutely no education in that. But if it tastes really good, then it further validates that decision in there. So our products taste really, really, really good. And that was just me looking at the cost of goods and seeing that our flavoring might be like $1.50 and saying, let's take it to $2.50. And that difference made such a significant change. So I think flavoring, second, formula, and then brand awareness, brand identity helped us out a lot.
Do you find that there is a big call for, so the multivitamin is vegan friendly, the aminos are vegan friendly. Do you find that a significant portion of the consumers are looking for that more these days, or I guess specifically the people that are coming to Inspired?
Yeah, dude, great question. So significant consumers or significant sector of consumers like that is so vast. So you could go, the majority of women are going to be a lot more aware of veganism. Men aren't. So that's like 50% right there. And then within that, how many really care if it's vegan? How many care if it's naturally sweetened?
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of like hot terms, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to sell any better, but people might be more aware of it. So saying that something's vegan might help it sell better, even if it's not superior whatsoever at all, just because you can put that on that.
Right.
So I would say if you could do something vegan, even if you could do something naturally sweetened, 100% do that. That's just another, like, whenever you do a formula, you're not just doing a formula because it's going to help boost NPS or it's going to help with, VO2 max or anything like that. It has to have a communicable level to the consumer that they identify with. And that's like more the marketing side, but you have to have all that. So using vegan just helps us with the marketing thing. It's just another thing that we can put money into that people are like identify with.
Yeah. Do you think seeing vegan on the label would actually turn any customers away?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, and I have a lot of friends that are like on the carnivore diet and everything like that, and they can have whatever opinion they want. But that is such a small sector of consumers right there.
Right.
The majority of consumers, dude, you put vegan on it, and it's just, even if they don't know what that signifies, like seriously, they'll be like, oh, fuck, it's vegan.
It's got to be. It's got that connotation of like with organic that is automatically healthier, better for you.
Healthy, dude. Same thing with like GMOs. Same thing with everything out there. Absolutely, like it's a marketing term.
Absolutely. We already touched on Landon joining up forces with you at Inspired. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how that came? Because I've known him for a couple of years through Ntel, like you have, and worked with him on and off. What I'm curious about is how did the two of you cross paths? How did the thing? What's he going to be doing with Inspired now?
Yeah, man. So, kind of a long story. We both competed in the same sort of level of the marketplace, as in we had a really good pre-workout. So we had the apples to apples kind of thing going for a while. So with that, we both knew who each other were.
Mm-hmm.
We also both were like creatively, or we had a lot of innovation with the creative aspect of it, where it came down to the art.
Yeah.
Not a lot of companies do that. They'll have either the cool art side of it, they'll have good formulas, or they'll have good influencers. And he was bringing together formulations with a creative aspect to it. So that's something that I already identified and I appreciated. So I was aware that he existed in the spectrum or whatever that we were, the marketplace that we're competing. Yeah. And we know the same individuals. So it's the same thing as like, I don't know, you go to the same high school or you're at the same university or something. You know this individual, you have, friends in the same group and whatnot. You've heard about each other. Everybody always told me that, dude, you'd get along with Landon so well. Oh, bro, he thinks the same way that you do. And it'd be outside of this, but with like art, music, which is really good things to have relatable, especially if you're going to be working with the individual.
Right.
So it was acknowledging the existence, having an appreciation for their capabilities, their artistic abilities, how driven they were. And he approached me earlier this year, and we just kind of had an open dialogue ongoing of not knowing where anything would transpire, how it would transpire, where it would go. but at least put it on the table, which is the most important thing. If you talk to anybody, always keep your options open, never burning bridges, you know. And so things started to evolve. He ended up leaving Ntel, and you know, a couple other things went on in his life that he approached me as like, hey, I really want you to consider bringing me onto the company. I know I can help you out. And I have multiple levels of apprehension because I've worked with a lot of people. I've had a lot of good friends that I've worked with, and it hasn't panned out. So you just have, you know, trust issues with people's accountability, because accountability in this industry, maybe all industries, it's difficult, man. It's really, even if you're an adult, accountability, like nobody holds himself accountable, let alone, you know, their friends or loved ones. So we started that conversation. He ended up flying out here. We like literally, I never met the dude in person, right? He's like, hey man, I want to fly out there. I was like, fuck, you know, when could you come out? He's like, next week. Comes out next week, spends a couple days out here. We hang out, drive, talk about a lot of stuff that's completely outside of business, which I can say anything to any kind of partnership, especially like your loved one. You have to be able to have different levels of connection that are outside of the first initial, I don't know, intent, whatever that may mean to you. So yeah, dude, I had apprehension because I've been completely fucked over before, and I'm the type of person that puts like 110% of myself into people. And Stephanie always gets on me because she's like, "Oh, you give yourself everything, and then people end up fucking you over." And my argument against that is like, well, you have to continue, because if you become jaded, then the whole world fucking becomes jaded, and then it dissolves into this cesspool of everybody being narcissistic, you know what I mean, and that kind of repetition. So. Dude, we align like this. He's quite a bit younger than me. I'm 35 years old. He's only 26, so I almost got a decade on the guy.
Oh shit! I didn't realize he was that young. I thought he was at least 30.
No, I know. I told him it's because white people, you guys age so poorly. So like, I already had a different level when I knew, or a different level of apprehension or worry when I knew what age he was, which is, it's difficult. Even people in our 30s, like you and I, they could still be extremely immature and have zero accountability. Let alone in your 20s, like you talked to me in my early 20s, like super fuckboy Chris, you know, get away from me, big heart, but like, you know what I mean? That's his own issues. But when I got to know him more, Landon as like an individual is a super genuine guy on multiple levels, man. Being extremely selfless, which is super important. If you're in a relationship with somebody, they have to be selfish, because the opposite of that is selfish. And then they take everything from you. They don't give you anything. It has to be reciprocated.
Right.
He is the type of dude that reciprocates. So if I put in 200%, he gives me 200% back. So it's like this getting to feel each other, and then finally seeing what transpired and what's evolving into. And the first thing that I'm going to show you that we just wrapped up today was like State of the Union. It's like, fuck, dude, I finally have somebody that I feel that if I put everything into it, it'll be reciprocated. And just like with you, you know, you talk about your wife so highly because you have this like synergy with each other that you both put into it. And you both benefit, man. It's not this singular side of just giving or just taking, but it's this give and take, this continual give and take and whatnot. And man, I got super off topic, but there you go. So yeah, then it transpired, and here we are. Listen to me ramble on again.
No, man, it's good. It's when you get on those rolls, man. It's awesome. I love hearing it. When I first saw the announcement made on Stacked, I saw that and I thought I came way out of left field, but I thought, you know, actually the more I thought about it, it makes sense, because I know that he's a creative type. You're a super creative guy. Y'all both have a passion for music. You know, whether it's in the same genre or not is not. I mean, music can be a unifier, even if you've got disparate, you know, interests. If somebody's country or somebody's rap or somebody's like gospel, and you know somebody is, you know, classic rock or something, you can always find a middle ground, because those notes will unify. It's kind of like math; it's a universal language.
Appreciation, yeah, there's definitely.
Absolutely. Are y'all going to start a cover band next? Y'all start a boy band afterwards?
Dude, the Pirate Masters. The Pirate Masters is like.
What instruments do you play, Chris? I know guitar, and then don't you play a couple of others, or dabble with a few others?
Yeah, man, kind of like almost everything. Guitar, piano, drums. I sing, and now learning like what Landon does, like programming, or I think that's like production, music production, so you can actually like make rap beats and sonic stuff like that. So yeah, dude, that's like my passion, and like the biggest blessing is being able to take a passion for the art side and then implement it into the supplement side. So then it's like beyond business, but you get a different level of fulfillment because you're offering something that's like truly from your heart, not just like taken from PubMed or going on Examine and just putting it on a fucking paper. Like
Right.
there's some really cool, creative aspect there.
Are you classically trained in any of the instruments, or is it all self-taught?
Yeah, all self-taught, man. Same thing with like Illustrator and all that shit, dude. It's just I'm an extremely stubborn person, and I'm a perfectionist. So if I get like set out to learn something, like I don't have to just learn it, but I have to be very well at it too. So,
Well, since you brought up Illustrator and the graphic design stuff, you've been uploading a steady stream of designs that you've been kind of concocting in your lab there in Utah, and I'm curious, are these pilot concepts that you're just you get an itch for something, you have an idea, or are these products that are actually getting ready to burst onto the scene soon?
man, good. So a little bit of both. There's some that I've posted that are actual clients that I've completed. But the majority of it is just me practicing and trying to get better. So I'll just I meditate a lot, or if I see something, or if I listen to something and it inspires me, I'll sit on the computer, dude. It's like a video game to me. So some people get down, they just like jive with it, crushing it, and they're like, I don't know, I don't play video games, but I can imagine there's stages or whatever you're trying to accomplish. I do the same thing with labels too. So once I start designing and I have like this idea or vision, I start putting little pieces together, little aspects together, and designing labels is the exact same thing as like constructing a song, as painting a picture. You have a foundation, and then you build the layers until it really, tells a story and whatnot like that. And I'm really fascinated with design and branding. And I know I'm not the best, but I want to be the best. And it takes just a lot of time and dedication put into that. So everything on my page, except for a couple things, are just conceptual designs or, designs of me trying to improve my craft.
Do you have any kind of ritual or process that you go through when you're sitting down to, work on one of these designs, or is it something that just kind of comes to you, whether you're in the shower or you're working out, or like in a dream state or something like that, or is it more spur of the moment, or is it something like you kind of get yourself set and you've either got a glass of bourbon or some kind of other chemical compound that might alleviate and open up the mental processes or something like that?
Definitely any kind of spirit, bourbon, vodka, that's always awesome. That and like music, getting your environment. I'm at home, so I'm extremely comfortable, so I don't feel like I'm put into some sort of like box. It's very like, openly, so I can be really artistically express myself. But then the other side is like, you also have to be a student too. So there's going to be a lot of times that you're not inspired, that you have to sit down and push yourself through the process. Or even if it's like me, I get a lot of inspiration from like the beverage industry. So if it's me doing research and development, seeing what these other branding companies or international companies, a lot of really cool European companies, beverage companies are just way fucking light years ahead than we are, especially in like sports nutrition.
Yeah.
You could also do your student aspect of that, where you got to sit down and push yourself through the process, even if you're not inspired. But it's kind of like it's a duality of both. I get inspired, I put on music, have a little drink, get on, like have a blast doing it. And, you go down that rabbit hole, or I sit down and I put up like, if I have the dimensions for a label, and I'm like, okay, you're going to fucking put something here no matter what, even if you don't like it, but push yourself through that process. So a little bit of both.
Do you ever, is that what the more of this, when you sit down and you're in the get shit done mentality where even if it sucks, you're just going to do it. Is that what you do when you find like you're kind of stuck creatively, to where even if you're not feeling it on a day, you will sit down and force yourself to do something just so you feel like you've gotten that part of your brain work for the day? Or do you, when you run up into those walls, do you just kind of sit back and say, you know what, I'm not worried about it, it'll come around to me, I'll just focus my attention on something else?
Man, that's super difficult because, just having any kind of like writer's block, or a level that you get to where you feel like you've explored all aspects of whatever it is, it becomes extremely frustrating, man. And you might be the same way, but I get to that threshold of where I'm like, why the hell can't I come up, or why can't I put down what I could visualize? And why can't I like put this on the paper? You know what I mean? I get probably more frustrated than anybody. And that's because that's like a level of, juvenile aspect of myself where I get so frustrated, not with not being able to do it, but really frustrated with myself that I can't visualize or create something when I know it's there and I don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time with design, because you'll hit that kind of brick wall and then you're like, dude, what the hell, man? There's all these other areas where I can get inspired by. Why am I not being able to produce? When that happens, I make myself get off the computer and I'll play the guitar. or I'll push myself into some other like different art aspect that I know becomes it's a lot more fluid to me outside of this. And it could be just going through like a chord progression or playing some sort of melody, or vice versa. If I play the guitar and I hit that brick wall, I'll get on the computer. And same thing with like the music design software I have and whatnot. So if I get stuck here, I definitely don't go sit on the couch, because when I do that, I get so frustrated with myself. I really do. And then my attitude affects Stephanie, and then it affects my daughter. So I try to not let myself get into that environment or that atmosphere. So I definitely alleviate that by, or fuck, dude, I'll go on a walk, take the dogs on a walk or something. So there has to be some sort of expression when you get to that level of frustration or that writer's block level.
Gotcha. How do you deal with burnout? I think all of us that are kind of in business for ourselves run into it at some point. Like, you'll start out hard and heavy and get going, and then you hit a point where it feels, all right, maybe it's just me, I don't know. Maybe you've experienced this too, but there comes a point every, 3 to 6 months or so where it's like you've just been grinding, doing work, and it just comes a point where your brain just taps out and says, "Man, I can't write. I couldn't even tell you what the fuck citrulline does anymore on a given day." It's like that's the point where my brain gets sometimes, especially when it's a lot of writing stuff that I get, a lot of assignments that I got to get done, and it comes to a point where that. So, have you ever experienced anything like that? And what strategies do you use to kind of either get away from it, fix it, or do you just kind of lean into it and say, it's going to come back around. I know myself. I'll get out of this funk in a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two things there. A lot of ways that I use to push through it are having like a drink or eating something or having like some sort of supplemental. I don't really do too much nootropics just because there's not many out there that I really value. But it might be literally like taking a break, having a drink, coming back, then you're fired up. But your body has so much of a capacity to do any one thing, and you got to look at your body as like a vessel. So eventually your vessel is going to be completely empty, and you cannot just force that through, because then it becomes a stress factor, and then it's become negative on your health. So when you get there, dude, the whole burnout thing that really happened with me with Inspired, because I've been doing this over 5 years now, and I've been through so many relationships, and then I've ended up being on my own, which I still have my lovely lady. She helps me out with a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. But you get to that level, and if you can't identify when you get to that level, then your attitude, your energy is going to be toxic to everybody around you. So I think the most important thing for a business person is to accept that you're going to have a burnout, but then knowing how to disconnect from that, just so it doesn't further on or progress into something that's even worse, which is you just saying, fuck it all. I quit. I'm leaving, which everybody gets there. I've gotten there multiple times.
Yeah.
What I've done to get out of that, maybe you do this too, is if I get to my threshold with Inspired where I'm like, dude, I am burnt the fuck out, not just with like design, but talking to people, with dealing with all these emotions, instead of just saying fuck it all together, I'll put my energy, or I'll have something else to alleviate that. And that's why I started doing design. That's why I started doing manufacturing. I hate saying consulting, but working with people to help them out, because then it's fun. If you continue to do the same thing, like I always use redundancy, but if you continue to stay in the same redundant like circle or flow, you'll get burnt out at a much faster pace as if you spread yourself on different creative outlets. And that could be working with people, it could be formulating, or not doing any of that, drawing or playing an instrument, depending on what your hobby is. So you need to be able to have other outlets other than work, because the whole hustle and grind thing is great until you're left with an empty vessel, and then it becomes toxic on other individuals.
Yeah. You mentioned manufacturing. What, if you can get into it, what are you doing with manufacturing specifically?
Yeah, so manufacturing, so my production company, which I call it production instead of manufacturing or consulting. Production just sounds like you're facilitating somebody's needs to help benefit them in whatever aspect that may be. So we do everything from design, which I'm doing all the design right now just because I have a blast. My plate's getting pretty full, so I have a lot of other designers that I'll probably start bringing on just gradually at a time. But with manufacturing, it wasn't until March I started looking at all the assets and the network that I've built up, the Rolodex that I built up over years and years, only for Inspired, and then looked around. It's like, okay, there's a lot of individuals that don't have a trust. We're talking about manufacturing, that don't have a trustworthy manufacturer, don't know the process, or don't know all the levels that they could be fucked over by their manufacturer if they're disingenuous or dishonest to them. So how can I use something that I spent a lot of time building up to help other individuals and then turn that into a business And that was from, the flavor houses I've worked with, from the label providers, the manufacturers, where I worked with a couple, some of the biggest in the US, the logistical standpoint, the design standpoint of what's taken to build Inspired, and flipping that and letting other people really benefit from it. So now it's everything, man, from anything that you want, from R&D to, nutrient allocation, like everything is what we do. So
Gotcha. So you're all right. I wasn't sure if you were starting up your own manufacturing facility, or like you were trying to build one from the ground up. All right, that makes more sense.
Yeah, no, I'm technically employed. I have a contract with two manufacturers that we work here. Each one has a different scale. One's minimum's 2,500 units. They go all the way to 50,000 unit runs. The other one's only a couple hundred units. So it kind of gives me the ability to assess the company's standpoint of what they could do, what they're capable of, and then put like the best fit for them. So I don't think I'm going to start a manufacturer, to be honest, which it sounds great and it's been romanticized, but the issues that come with it, if you do it legitimately, which there's a lot of illegitimate people out there that are manufacturing, which I know who they are. I don't want to do that. I know how much it costs to do a legitimate one, so there's not much of a point.
You said you don't use a lot of nootropics. You had Connect for Anastasis. Do you and I'm guessing you're going to re-release Connect under Anastasis. Do you think there's going to be a nootropic come into Inspired at all, or is it going to be solely relegated to the Anastasis line?
No, we have so with Inspired, I formulated Super Rad. Super Rad was the one that I posted a while back. That was like the 1980s theme, like Player One. So we are going to have a gaming product come out, which like I hate that label because then it just sounds like everything else out there.
Yeah, you have images of G Fuel or something. It's 140 milligrams of caffeine and then pixie dusted nootropics the rest of the way.
It's horrible. And Ghost came out with theirs, which I do think is a great formula too. So there's a market for it. It's a really difficult market to penetrate. And the only reason that we would be getting into it is because we have a lot of our athletes that are relatively known inside of the gaming industry. They have relationships with people that are really known, like fucking gamers. They're like athletes, legitimately. Like they're big time. Some will make like really good money. Yeah. So we already have somewhat of a structure and relationships built there. This is just us, manifesting a product that already has a demand. And it's the same thing with like the multi and our greens. There's already demand for it, so now we're just going to be fulfilling that.
Gotcha. What is your personal productivity or nootropic stack look like that you make? Is it just a cup of coffee with a slider of bourbon on the side, or what is the Chris Waldrum productivity stack of the day?
Man, I think the most important thing to be able to have any kind of like consistent cognitive ability, or to be able to have like a comparison of if you have a bad day, why did you have a bad day, is just having like structure within your morning. The morning time is the most important thing. So get to bed at a reasonable time, get at least 8 hours of sleep. First thing that when you get up though, don't look directly at your phone. Like the first thing that you don't need is blue light and all the anxieties that come with your phone, technology, social media. That already fucks up your mind. Get into some sort of state of like stretching, make sure you hydrate. So every morning I get up, I have 32 ounces of warm to hot water with lemon or lime, just something citrus to help break up the phlegm, help alkaline your body. And then just getting your mindset right. So it's more so of any kind of supplement, because I don't take any energy stuff outside of a pre-workout. If I work out, and coffee, I do have coffee in the morning, but nothing kind of superior like New Vigil or Blue Vigil or any of the other cool stuff out there. But it's really just structuring my morning to be conducive to the day that I wanted to have. And if I didn't do that, if one of the little aspects of my morning was off, that threw off everything, dude. My emotional state, energy, my focus. So it's like how you get up, how you start your day, if it's with meditation, with prayer, stretching, drinking some hot water, getting the circulatory system going. That is the most important thing, because when I was younger, I would get up, I would have like, a big old coffee, and I'd just get right to work. Just right to work and drain my acetylcholine, drain all the energy outside of my brain. So the older I get, the more I understand that it's the structure of your day and how you structure your day that will dictate, I guess, how productive you are.
All right, so would you say you're a person that craves or enjoys structure and a regimented lifestyle?
I think only when it comes to like the morning aspect of it. I had a call with the owner of a relatively big company in the US, and he's like, Chris, like, what the hell do you do all day? Because I see your stories, and it looks like you're just like aimlessly wandering everywhere, like so lackadaisical. And I was like, I mean, it really seems like that because I've learned to enjoy my day. So my days have structure as far as like how I get up, how I start everything and get my engines going.
Mm.
But when it comes to other things, I'll definitely have a good task manager of knowing what I need to get done through the day. But I've learned to like truly enjoy the day. And that's if something comes up that pulls me away from it, I don't get upset, but I enjoy that moment and go through the experience. And one thing that taught me is like having a daughter. You know what I mean? There's a lot of
Yeah.
times, like, Coda, leave me alone, stop. And I've tried to get out of that. It's like, okay, I can unplug from this because the computer's going to be here when I get back. That call will be there, email will be there, and enjoy the moment. So that's been applied to a lot of different aspects of my life to where I could just get up and like, I fucking enjoy my day to the fullest. And that's helped me be so much more productive. And it's helped me not get burned out as fast as you would if you only dedicate time to the office. Like 9 to 5 jobs, we already know that's inferior to doing the 4-hour workday. And not even that, working from home, now we're seeing that that's even more productive because when you work from home, you're in your own atmosphere, you're comfortable, you can work at your own pace. And as long as you have something to gauge or something to see the metrics or quantify like your work progress, then work an hour a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was another off topic.
No, that's great because that's something I've always been, and this is not going to surprise anybody when I say this. Is I'm a very much a creature of habit. When my schedule, my routine gets disrupted, it doesn't bode well for me. Just it's more stressful or irritating. I've come to create a certain lifestyle for myself, and by that I'm not saying I'm driving around in Ferraris and those things like that, or eating bonbons every night. I've got a set regimented structure that I like to do. I've got this, I do this, then I've got this is what I'm going to eat, this is what I'm going to do this. And when stuff starts to get like a little wonky, I've gotten better with it over the years. And like you said, having a kid certainly helps with that. But even with that, like we've got her scheduled to our structure. Like we're not bending to it like her will. We've kind of bent her towards the way that Sandy and I do everything, which most of the time works. Obviously a 3-year-old is going to be a 3-year-old, and you're going to have to go with the ebbs and flows. But that's something that I always need to still need to work on. That's if it's a weakness of mine, is that I'm a creature of habit almost to a fault, and it takes a lot of just deep breaths and just kind of stepping back and realizing, like you said, the computer will be there if I'm in the mood, if I'm in the groove of something, but Sandy comes along, or the halfling wants me to do something with her and it's supposed to be my work time, I can always just push it unless I'm super in the weeds or something, or I've got a really good idea for an article or something. Then I'll say, Sandy, can you take over? But yeah, I think being able to, like you said, just be able to flex in and out of things is key to like a stress-free or a less stressful lifestyle.
Yeah, like you made a good point. Like you have to have structure to gauge progress. It's really hard to gauge progress if you're, like I said, aimless and doing whatever the hell you're doing all the time. So you have to have something to be able to quantify whatever progress you're doing. But at the same time, if your structure is so like inhibitive of you to really enjoy stuff, which is really easy to get there, then you also got to identify that too. So when I say like my mornings, like I get up in the morning, I stretch, I drink my water, I work, then I go to the gym for about an hour and a half, then I come back and work, then I have lunch. So that is always the same. That's kind of like my morning. Until I like break my fast, that's always going to be identical. But that is what dictates the rest of my day. If I get thrown off, I can't go to the gym at the same time. If I get to lunch late or something, or then it throws off everything. So you have to have structure. It's just more so from like after my fast for the next like 8 hours, it's pretty much up there where I handle things depending on their priority or the urgency of that. But I don't hold myself accountable to a fault, where if I don't do something then, and I used to, I would get frustrated with myself, feel defeated or angry, and then that wasn't a good, effect.
Right. And what you said, you have to have structure in order to gauge progress. That holds even that much truer to training in the gym. Like you've got to have some kind of structure to know if you're getting stronger, if you're adding size, if you're adding reps. But at the same time, if the bench press is starting to grind your shoulders to shit, you've got to be able to adapt and kind of go to a chest press machine, go to dumbbells, do push-ups or dips or something that's not irritating the piss out of your shoulders.
Dude, it's relatable in almost every aspect. I don't care what kind of profession or what life situation is. Absolutely.
Now, you are in Utah, correct?
St. George, Utah.
St. George, Utah. Okay, so Sandy and I, one of these days, we're going to get a second house in some climate that is not swamp ass, hot ass balls, Texas. And one of the properties we were looking at was in St. George, Utah. So can you give us a little bit of an insight to lifestyle in St. George?
Yeah, so like the lifestyle, the energy is what was a big like pull to us here, and it was I mean, there's one university, Dixie State, so there's a big youth culture here. They have a really big football team. The rugby's big, so there's younger individuals here, but the majority of people here are like working professionals, entrepreneurs, and it's kind of like this little suburbia bubble that we live in. All the friends that I have here, they all own businesses. So there's a completely different level of constraint that you'd have into like when I lived in California, where everybody worked for somebody. Not a lot, not as many business owners as I know here. So there's a different level like freedom, and with that comes this kind of aspect of me being able to meander out there, go on a walk, and really enjoy disconnecting from it. So it's super outdoorsy. There's a lot of retirees here, so there's a lot of people that are 60 plus and older because it's very dry heat. Everything is like recreational here, so there's a ton of bike trails. There's a lot of parks. Every neighborhood that I go to has a really nice park. So the accessibility of outdoor activities for families is huge. I wouldn't say move here if you're like a single guy or single girl. Then it's going to be a little awkward. But if you have like a family and you want that kind of atmosphere, there's nothing better than this. And I've been over, throughout the U.S. and we went to a lot of places before we moved here just to see if we fit anywhere. One of them being Colorado, because I have friends out there all over Colorado. Decided, hell no, we're not going to Colorado. Nothing against people that live there, but we decided here because it was just conducive to the lifestyle that I wanted for my family, and then also for me as being an entrepreneur, having this kind of like the visual aspect of how beautiful it is right around here. It gives me inspiration and keeps me inspired and motivated, which I was in California, surrounded by buildings, surrounded by cities, and I just felt like it was constricted on me.
Yeah, we were looking at St. George, Utah, and then some places up in Montana too. The property costs seem, very reasonable, especially compared to the property taxes and the cost of real estate around here in the greater Austin area.
Yeah, dude, in Austin, I've never been there, but I've always heard great things about the culture, lifestyle. What I mean?
Yeah, it's getting a little crazy now, but but before that, I'm sure it was all good. I mean, overall, outside of the past year or 8 to 10 months of craziness that's been going on down here, it's been very enjoyable, and I'm glad we moved here. Just we're looking at plus the summers here just suck. It's like 100 degrees every day if you include the heat index in here. So we're looking for something like decent places to live, maybe for like a few other months. And obviously this is going to be down the road because I definitely don't have enough money to afford a second mortgage at the time. So, I need to start my own supplement brand or strike the rich or find some oil in my backyard or something like that.
Dude, you never know. This might happen.
Yeah, you never know, man. In closing, let's you mentioned bourbon or vodka. What are your favorite bourbons or whiskeys, if you have any?
Man, so I used to be just a super plain Jane when it came to whiskey, and it's just Jack Daniels, just because at a bar, like you're not going to order something super fancy unless you're sipping with friends, having a neat drink.
Right.
Always be just Jack and Coke and whatnot. But my favorite, like if I could drink anything, sipping it wise, it would probably be like a higher quality tequila, like a Don Julio or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I could like really sip and enjoy. I don't get any hangovers with tequila. It puts me in a great mood. If I just want to get the effect from something, which let's be real, guys, the reason that we drink isn't necessarily just to taste it, but it's to get the effect from it.
Yeah.
It's always going to be vodka, dude. I'll put vodka with some Zevia or something like that. And that just gets me there. Typically, when I work late, I'll have a couple drinks. I'll work all the way till late in the night, sipping it. Keeps me motivated. I have music on, and then you're just like in the zone, really feeling it. Yeah. So I think the alcohol is dependent on the situation.
No, that's perfect, because that plays right into what I've said before. And Sandy thinks I'm crazy, but so alcohol is technically supposed to be a depressant, but she's under the assumption that my brain, I'm so in my own head and I'm so tightly wound up here that when I drink, it actually makes me loosen up, but not in like a lazy way. I actually get more motivated to either like go and like train or get shit done, like writing wise, because I'll be able to bang out. If I'm really grinding through something, I can get 800 to 1,000 words in an hour usually if I'm writing. But man, if I get like just the right amount of bourbon in me, or just enough to like take the edge off, it's like 2,000 to 3,000 words an hour. It's like you enter this flow state where And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's just because there's so much type A personality in here, and I just get inside my head so much that I just need something to bash me on the head and just get me to chill the fuck out.
Yeah, dude. So Jordan Peterson, if you know who he is, super awesome guy. If you know,
Yep.
clinical psychologist, just super smart guy. So the majority of people, alcohol will work as a depressant, but there's select individuals, and typically it's people that are a little bit more, not necessarily type A, but introverts. When they have it, it actually could work as like a benefit to them, where it doesn't make them kind of like lethargic or anything, but it's like an energetic potion to them. And I'm much more introverted than I would be like an extrovert,
Yeah.
and it's a complete opposite on me. So some individuals, alcohol works as a stimulatory and actually helps you open up different pathways in your brain. And there's a really cool study that showed that alcohol doesn't actually like inhibit memory loss, but it could actually like increase if you go through something when you're a little bit drunk, you'll remember it again when you drink again. So I get a lot of work done, and there's definitely like a threshold. Like if you go, that obviously you're not going to do anything. But if you use it like as a tool or as an asset, then it can be very actually beneficial to you. You know, as long as you don't abuse it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that has found the magical creative powers of a fine liquor at night. I'm glad I'm not the only one drinking alone and working.
Dude, I love it, man. No, it's like, you're a father. You have a lot of business obligations, a lot of people that you're accountable for, and that level of stress is hard to maintain all the time. And if you could use something like a little bit of alcohol or whatever to be able to alleviate that and then allow you to work more, then it's a beneficial thing.
Yeah, then I just need to come up with a liver detoxification supplement and just start taking that every day as my my pre-workout ahead of my drinking and writing.
They just got to come up with a spirit that has stuff for your liver inside of it. You know what I mean? It has like things, so it's like might seem counterproductive, but it's actually going to work in line with what you're doing. You know?
Exactly. Put some N-acetylcysteine in there. Some DHB, is that what the other one? DBH? What something? I forgot what I was looking at it the other day. Just like hepatoprotective ingredients and things like that.
Really, yeah, that far surpasses me. One thing that I haven't educated myself on, which I should, because we're obviously talking about that, is like kind of any kind of liver protectant.
yeah. N-acetylcysteine is a really big one. Some other kind of polyphenols, like a grapeseed extract, would be good, and some other things. So it's theanine. Interesting. Theanine and taurine, interestingly, have some protective effects in the liver against alcohol.
Really?
Yeah. That most of those studies were done in rats, but I think Alcar's got some in the brain. So yeah, if you just make like the nootropic liver protectant thing, and you'll be fine.
A little bit of Red Bull. That's why Red Bull and vodka. I'm telling you, they got it right.
Magical, man. Awesome, Chris. Well, in closing things up, man, you have any final remarks for the people before we put a bow on this thing?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and thank you for supporting Robert, because unlike a lot of people who are in this just for monetary gain, he's in it to individualize or educate individuals and help them elevate themselves out of this darkness, which is kind of the whole aspect of the supplement industry. So thank you for setting a platform to educate people, because you are doing something very beneficial, and I appreciate it, Robert. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind words, man. That was awesome. Where can people find you, Inspired, and all the other goodness that you have to bring to the world?
Man, so our Instagram, Inspired Nutra, or you can go on our website, inspirednutra.com. So you don't have to try to spell out nutraceuticals. I know, the worst name I could have ever picked. So this is Inspired Nutra. And yeah, drop us a line, reach out to us anytime. I always check our Instagram. Stephanie's going to be the one that actually responds to you. But if you want to reach out to me, you can go to just Chris Waldrum, which is my Instagram. I'd love to hear from everybody. And fortunately, a lot of our customers reach out to me, and I take a lot of time to respond to everybody accordingly, because fuck, dude, you guys are the reason that we exist.
Excellent, man. Well, thank you again for making time today to do this. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and see your pretty face. And we'll be in touch, my man.
Dude, thanks for listening to Rambles.
You got it, buddy.
Later, buddy.
Bye.